Welcome back to Better Than Fiction with Jeanette and Eden. We're going to start with updates like we had in the last video. So, I'll start. My book number 2 was The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, and I finished it, and it added more to my TBR because it is a series, so I will be finishing the rest of that series. And then my series book, let me find it, was Black Sun.
Oh, by Rowan Horse.
But yes, and that was fantastic. Again, added to my TBR. So, but that was fantastic.
But we are supposed to be knocking them down, but this month we found that we knocked down a book a piece, but we added 2 more. Each. So I'm not quite sure if this is working in our favor. But I would like to say that The Black Sun that she just finished, I had also read it. The author is wonderful. The description is wonderful. And she is one of the few Indigenous writers who writes fantasy. So she's a new writer. And an Indigenous writer as well. So it was really interesting, which is why I had originally picked it up, because it was getting a lot of talk about it when it first came out a couple years ago.
Yeah, it was a
recommend.
Hugo Award finalist. It didn't win that year, but it should have. It was an amazing read.
I don't know, it was up against 1,000 Ships, which I adore.
Which you did. Well, I haven't read that one, so add it to my list here. My nonfiction that I had read was a poetry novel called Dearly by Margaret Atwood. And I get very bad imposter syndrome when I read poetry. I just don't feel like I have the gumption or the brain power to really sit and digest poetry. I had a few aha moments, but otherwise it was kind of going over my head. So I checked that off though.
Yeah, I hate that when you feel like you're just reading the words and not digesting the words. But sometimes when we read books, poetry's that way for me sometimes too. Or when I'm too tired at night. I was having that moment when it's a book I want to read and I was literally just reading the words and it's like, I am too tired. Stop, because this book is really good.
Yeah. And I've read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got 6 books left to my 23 books for 2023 since February. And then I finished 1, 2, 3, 4 squares on my bingo challenge. Pretty slow at that one. Bingo bit.
I'm doing really good. I have 8 squares off my bingo. I like to listen to audio, so I was, pick it and choose. I got to knock off my audio book this month. I listened to Rabbit Hutch, which was the National Book Award winner. I'm not sure what to really think about it. It's getting mixed reviews. I don't tend to go and really look at all the different reviews until after I finish. I just kind of look at the initial, and I'm glad I'm not the only one who felt that way. I was kind of wondering, wow, am I just not paying enough attention because it's in audio, what the deal was. It's very disjointed. Some areas really harsh. The characters kind of change names even in the book. So when one character changes names, you really need to pay attention to when that happens. It really looks deeply at relationships and different types of people. It was not one of my favorites. I have to admit, I only gave it 3 stars.
Yeah.
It's just one of those winners that I think that it either appeals to you or it doesn't. We do have the hardcover here in the library, and it might be easier to read. But according to Goodreads reviews and some of the other literary reviews, I was not the only one who felt that it was a 3-star, and that you either liked it or didn't like it. So that was my audio. I also finished a collection of short stories, and this particular author, Samantha, I think her last name is Schweblin, she writes really weird stuff. And I'm not typically a short story reader. I like the description. I like the epicness of a novel. But I have read all but one of her books, and she has now 4 out. They are really odd. Fever Dream is even odder. But I felt this collection of stories was maybe the most relatable of hers that I have read. She originally writes in Spanish and then is translated into English. We do again have this hardcover here as well. And Andrew, who also works here, we had a really good discussion on how to read short stories and poetry.
Yeah.
You know, they're not to be read as a novel. Sit down all at once. You read a story, put it down and go read something else. Digest that story, digest that poem. And for those of us who are heavy novel readers, that's actually really difficult. And it takes a certain kind of reader. And it was just a wonderful discussion. So if you're having some issues, think about putting the book down. It's okay to read another book and then go back to the short story collection or the poetry. And I deliberately had to tell myself, put the book down, go read something else, then come back to the short stories. So maybe that helped.
Yeah, I wish I had done that because I read it.
One cover.
I read like a part at a time, and I wish I would have cut it up a bit more. Read one in the morning, read one at lunch,
or
one
read
before
it
bed.
in a week from now.
Yeah.
And that's what I deliberately did, and maybe it helped. Or maybe these stories were just less like out in left field.
Sure.
I don't know, but they were good, and I do recommend the short story collection off our shelf. My nonfiction, I read Hot Dogs and Hamburgers, Unlocking Life's Potential by Inspiring Literature at Any Age. This was a really good nonfiction book. It was written almost like a memoir, where this gentleman wants to help his son who is struggling to read, help him learn how to read. And he goes and talks to the Chicago literacy folks who runs the literacy program for adults. He takes their certification class, starts teaching in the evening once a week with adults, and uses those techniques. But it's more than just the technique. It was about the relationships he built with the adults and the confidence he instilled in his son. And even his daughter, who was fine, who read wonderfully. It's just a really good feel, was a good feel relationship book as well as a professional read. I, in February, officially finished my 23 books of 23. So
And it's only the third month.
it is. So I finished those. My series book was Starless Crown by James Rollins. I like fantasy. And if you are a Tolkien person, you will like the epic feel and the way they're building their team and the way their team has to travel, very Tolkienville. It is not Tolkien by any means, but it gives you that feel. At first I was thinking, oh, it's fine. I don't know if I'll read the second one. At the last minute, I have to go get the book off the shelf and read the second one. So I added that series definitely to finish, and I think it's slated to be a trilogy. So I was looking on to that reading. My what was my book? Number 2 was The Girl in the Zoo, which was an interesting book about a human girl being in a zoo for robots and AI.
Yeah.
So it was, opposite of what we typically think about, and really brought in the issues of humanity and what we do to whether it's animals or robots or what museums or zoos do. So it was really, really interesting. I'm not sure if I'd buy it for here. It was not one that we own here at the library, but it was a different perspective.
Yeah. I feel like I always pull the numbers, so we'll let you do it today. Our TBR number for March
Will be number 3.
Number 3, 3 for 3.
All right.
So I will be reading The Fine Print by Lauren Asher.
And I will be reading The 100 Loves of Juliet. The author's last name is Sky.
Interesting.
Yes, it's one of them off my e-reader that it's now telling me it's kind of full, so I need to read off that list too. So this is an ebook that I'll be reading.
This was one of my Christmas gifts, so excited to get to that. And then our book prompt
It's a long one. A book with an arranged marriage or a marriage of convenience.
Oh my gosh, that's one of my favorite
What
romance
up your
tropes.
alley? Yes, right up your alley. So this is yay. Eden's gonna be very
This is
excited.
Eden's month.
This is Eden's month. Absolutely.
My nonfiction, I am very excited to read Green Witchcraft A Practical Guide to Discovering the Magic of Plants, Herbs, Crystals, and Beyond by Paige Vanderbeck. I picked this up at a crystal store. I went with my friends, and I'm excited to get into it. It's kind of like a how-to starter up, so that's going to be I believe it's in the 100s. Yeah, psychology, logic, and ethics. It falls under that realm.
And something else we noticed, how pretty the cover is. As we get new books in, we are noticing that all of a sudden we're getting prettier covers again.
Yes.
It's not just, a bland cover. The books even feel nice. I know with a lot of our hardcovers, sometimes we cover them, and you as a library user don't get that enjoyment that we got to feel the cover of the book, because they almost feel velvety, kind of rubbery, velvety. But some of the new books are just simply beautiful. So you'll want to come in even if maybe the theme of the book isn't necessarily your thing. Take a look at the covers. They're beautiful.
Emily Wilde's Fairy Encyclopedia is one of those books that we just think it's stunning, and it's a hardback, but it doesn't have our library cover on it, so you can't go and touch it, and it does have that nice soft.
It's just an interesting feel, and
it
colors.
Was a very good book too. I did read that this year already, and that was a fantastic book.
So take a look at those.
What are you reading?
I am, for my nonfiction, going to be reading An Immense World by Ed Young. This just won the 2023 Andrew Carnegie Medal for Nonfiction. It is also on the New York Times Magazine's Best Reads. This has just gotten a ton of attention. I expect it to pick up. It's on the long list for a couple other awards, so I would not be surprised if it hasn't picked up a few more by the end of the year. It is in the 500s, which I had not read yet. I hope. I guess I just did. It's the open, which is, of course, science, plants and animals. So this is the book from our library. So if you're interested, as it has won the Carnegie Medal, it will be available when I finish with it.
Another thing I just know I'm going to be reading this month is my book club book, Bookstack Chat. We meet the first Thursday of every month at 10 a.m. We are going to be reading The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. It's a bit of a rom-com where two roommates live in a flat in the UK. They don't know each other. They've never met, but they live in the same apartment, and they just leave each other sticky notes. So
that sounds fun.
it does. It sounds cute.
A novel of sticky notes.
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks, 3M.
Yeah.
So a book that I am currently reading, it just sounded funny. I mean, how can you pass up a book that says mayhem, masses of menacing monsters, and pulsating parasitic vines? This is one gnarly day at the beach. How can you not pick that up? It is one of those dystopia novels. They're having a mighty bad day at the beach. I'm not quite halfway, but almost. And any bad thing that can happen at the beach during the end of the world with space monsters and meteor showers and horses on, it's just strange. I cannot stop reading it because it's just odd. It is something out of our collection. We just got it in, but I just couldn't pass it up.
Yeah.
It does not fit anywhere off my TBR list, which is, of course, our problem because that doesn't get down the list. But it is a cool looking book.
Yeah.
Something though that I took off, I was watching, actually I was a quilter on YouTube. And what her thought was why do we save our new stuff? We read the old stuff, but we save the new stuff, and then all of a sudden the new stuff becomes old. And I thought that just rang a bell with me. So, while I am reading off my TBR list, if I find a new book that I just need to read, and I don't want to wait to read it while it's new, talk about it while it's new, because there's a big chance that some more of you may decide to read it and want to discuss it. So I'm also going to put in those new books that I buy and sit on my shelf to be on the TBR list next year, the year after, or 5 years from now. So that's my tip today: is don't wait till
next year to read the new books.
Exactly.
This year.
Exactly. Which then, that's one reason I picked this particular nonfiction.
Yep.
I'm not waiting to read it. It has intrigued me. So we're going to be reading that.
Well, great. I think that's it for today. Or did you want to talk about
Commitment books. Commitment books, the scary books. Fantasy tends to be commitment books, but we also see fiction. There's been some fiction. And you could ask, what's a commitment book? It's a book that's really big that scares us.
Yeah.
Especially, we were afraid to pull them for February. We know February is a really short month, and so we were afraid of not only needing to read our other books, but that one of the picks would be a commitment book. And we both had a commitment book because I read fantasy.
I read 2 fantasy sci-fi, but they were like 500-page plus books, which is, it's a commitment.
It's
it
a
really
commitment.
is.
And so we want to stress, we made it. Don't stress those commitment books. Enjoy them, even if it takes a little bit longer. Some commitment books that have come out in fiction that are fantastic, but people have been more afraid of, as one of them is the Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois.
Yeah.
And that came out, I think, a year and a half ago now. It won a lot of awards, got a lot of attention. It was definitely worth the awards, and it's worth the commitment. It is a beautiful read. Won't make you feel like you're reading a commitment book, but it's scary to look at. So if you have if you're afraid of commitments, we say, go for it.
Do it.
Do it. Don't be afraid of those big books.
Yep. Feels nice when you do finish it.
It does. And then, unfortunately, we also now have more commitment books on our list.
Yeah.
Because we read them.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that is it for today.
Yes, we'll see you next month.
Yes. Happy reading.